Ladies and gentlemen, this session is sponsored by Delta Airlines. Please welcome co-founder and general manager of Duo Security at Cisco, Doug Song, joined by anchor for Detroit Public Television, Christy McDonald.
Well, good morning to all of you. It's great to see you. And Doug, welcome to the Detroit stage here at the Policy Conference.
All right, good morning, Detroit. All right.
All right. It's great. We've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship, obviously, in the last hour or so, and kind of leading up to you. And I know that there is a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs in the audience that say, I want to do what Doug did, starting a company in 2010 and then selling it to Cisco for over $2 billion. So you're a unicorn, and is that an odd title to have?
Yeah, I'm not unicorn. I'm not sure. That's been a tough one for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
But happy and very proud to have built this company here.
You know, whenever I talk to people who have started their own companies or kind of gone left, right, and made these amazing decisions to do something super bold and then becoming super successful with it, I always kind of track something in their childhood and when they started. When was the first time that you touched a computer or even said, oh gosh, this is something I'm totally clicking with?
Well, 8 years old in my dad's liquor store. Immigrant family, child labor, so I did all the data entry and all that stuff. So that's the first time I touched the computer. I'm not sure I really enjoyed that,
Mm-hmm.
but it was definitely the gateway experience for me.
But you understood that, wait, this could be something a little bit different. You started messing around with it. What kind of computer was it? Because I know the first time I had a computer, it was a pet Commodore in my elementary school library. And it was the coolest thing that I'd ever...
Yeah, it was IBM PC AT or XT. I don't remember which at the time, but yeah, it was early. But really what did it for me was the BBSs, finding other folks on the internet, or not the internet, on bulletin board systems, pre-internet, to go talk to, and then falling into the internet and never looking back.
All right, so before you became a unicorn, you were a hacker.
Sure, yeah, something like that.
All right, but again, I think this goes back to the disruptive part of being an entrepreneur and then creating ideas. So what was that experience like, and who were you hacking around with?
Yeah, well, my hobbies as a kid were basically skateboarding, graffiti, hacking. So, it's not somewhat transgressive, as my mom might say, ritualized forms of violence. But, hacking was about sort of exploring, right? Figuring out how to make computers do things they weren't supposed to do. And again, learning from each other. Right? We had a lot of friends online that only years later did I meet, but some of them went on to do huge things. We were talking backstage about my buddy Jan Koum, who did WhatsApp. He was the CEO and founder of WhatsApp. In our hacking crew were also folks like Sean Fanning, the founder of Napster, and a bunch of other folks. So it turns out you can find a lot of interesting people online, and some of them turn out to be okay.
So hacker to, essentially a guru in technology and security. So is that when you realized that tech was the great equalizer?
Yeah, frankly, and I tell people this all the time when they think about economic development and, success in their communities and so forth, no matter what business you're in, it's going to be impacted in some way, if it hasn't already, by technology. Every company almost is a tech company. Because technology improves human productivity, right? It's how we do things better, faster, more efficiently or effectively. And so, it is the great equalizer because in years past, right, to be successful, building a company and so forth, you had to have access to capital. You still need some access to capital, turns out, very often.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Go ahead.
But more often, you needed like land. Right? Or you need to be sort of from the landed gentry, or you have to come from a certain family with all these relationships and so forth. And, I have a buddy down in Atlanta, Paul Judge, who's a black security entrepreneur, PhD from Georgia Tech, very proud Morehouse grad. And he gives a wonderful kind of talk on how technology really has been an amazing equalizer for so many in the city of Atlanta. And he's continued to drive, more of that success, but helping people get access to that, bringing them together so they can actually learn how they can transform their communities, right, with this in this way.
You know, and I do want to talk a little bit about how we're doing that maybe in Detroit and the surrounding region, and if we're giving people enough opportunity to be able to be part of that and learning tech and incorporating that. But I want to talk a little bit about when you sold your company to Cisco, you said you liked Cisco's values. And I think sometimes when we think about companies and values, are you seeing companies using values more in their everyday business? And especially I think people are wary about tech, that tech, they're just out for the money. But you felt that there was a good value there at the company. Explain that.
Yeah, in fact, I'd argue that it's funny to hear about companies using values and so forth. I mean, anyone who's ever been part of a team, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's on a sports team, whatever, right? How you treat each other as a team is what defines, how you operate. And for us, that's the only thing that really made us better, or at least different, right, from many of our competitors. We weren't smarter. We didn't work any harder. We weren't better looking. The only thing that really made us different from our competitors as a strategic advantage was our ability to learn together faster, more effectively, and how we supported each other. Right? As we say at Duo, we try to be kinder than necessary. We go out of our way to help each other be successful. And how we treat each other is then how we also end up treating our customers. And we have that same mentality around helping our customers before we ever ask anything of them. And so, to be honest, there was no company that we would have sold to otherwise. We weren't looking, and in the Valley, as you point out, there is a deserved reputation for tech not really having that same grounding. And I consider that actually a strategic advantage here, right? Here in the Midwest, we have this unique advantage of being fairly grounded. The way I could describe it is like California is kind of a wine state, and Michigan's kind of a beer state. And there's a lot about that I deeply appreciate, right? A strong work ethic, right? It's very egalitarian, right? In a particular place like Ann Arbor, right, which is where we're based. Old hippie town, you got people who are very well-to-do, schlepping around in their flip-flops and tie-dye shirts like the rest of us at the farmer's market, whatever, right? And that's really important, because if you're trying to build a team and accomplish something great together, you need that, right? You need that. And out in the Valley, it can be different, right? It's more mercenary, right? Like companies like not only Duo over the last 10 years, but even prior companies to that, like Arbor, in the prior decade before. I probably lost, low single digit of employees. Like at Arbor, I hired like 80 engineers, and probably 3 ever left in 7 years. You can't do that in the Valley. Everyone's always kind of shiny object syndrome, like finding the next thing and distracted.
We're all going to the next thing. So when people are then, sometimes we talk about building a company or starting and trying to make something work, you're talking about at the same time that you're trying to have that success, and you've got to make sure that the books balance and you're paying people the money, that you're build that culture at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we've always talked about Duo success as being, we push decision-making down on the CEO, on the janitor, so is everybody at the company, right? They all have their respective sphere of influence, and their job is to make decisions, and hopefully good ones, on behalf of the company. But how do you make good decisions? Make a bunch of wrong ones, right? And what's important is that you learn from them, right? As a team, we win or we learn. And so that's all about how we come together as a group to figure out what works, what doesn't. And again, it's something I just think here in the Midwest, and particularly in Michigan, we're probably more predisposed to do well, have more of an underdog mentality. You sort of got to be a Lions fan or anything?
Oh, poor Lions. That hurts.
Sorry, but it's true, right? Like we're I don't know. I like the fact that no offense to Monica. I love Monica. Monica's amazing, right? But this underestimation. If you're a founder, you do have something of a chip on your shoulder, right? You do have something to prove. Here in the Midwest, I think there's a lot of folks who have that same kind of attitude.
So let's talk about the atmosphere in which we operate here in the Midwest, Southeast Michigan specifically. So in 2010, you create Duo. It's now 2020. How has the atmosphere in Southeast Michigan for entrepreneurs, for small businesses to be able to grow like yours did, how has it changed, do you think, in the last 10 years?
Yeah, there's been a lot more progress in terms of the development of the ecosystem through the hard work of folks like Monica. And so, there are a lot, but it's been very grassroots. So no offense to any of the institutional sort of approaches to developing the startup community, but the startup community has to be led by entrepreneurs. And I'll say that again, the startup community has to be led by entrepreneurs. It's not something that can really be taught. I know there's always this focus on things like mentorship and so forth. To be honest, I do believe in mentorship, it's important and so forth, but I think what's far more important is actually sponsorship. What people don't have are not ideas or decision support or those kind of, or advice. What they don't have is access and opportunity. And sponsorship is about creating access and opportunity for folks. And far too often, I see lots and lots of folks who would be amazing in what they do if only they had access to the right communities, perspectives, people, right, to help them. But it's difficult. In our region, I think we've done a much better job over the last 10 years of connecting Ann Arbor, Detroit, and actually all the way out to Grand Rapids, right? There's sort of this I-96 corridor of innovation, if you will. And actually, I'd maybe count Michigan Tech up there if you could bring it down here too. Because otherwise, for far too long, there's been this weird, invisible force field at 275 between Ann Arbor and Detroit, right? People just don't cross that boundary. Ann Arbor, for whatever reason, doesn't consider itself part of Metro Detroit, when it very much is. And, the Silicon Valley, from San Jose to San Francisco, that's actually farther apart than Ann Arbor is to Detroit. And I think, the thing that we're missing, so there's been a lot of work from a lot of people, a lot of individual leaders, a lot of grassroots community organizers to help bridge those communities and bring people together. There has been a lot of development of our venture capital community and things like that as well, but there's still so much else that's missing. There's, talent is a big issue, talent development, education, infrastructure. Is that the RTA millage was something that was very disappointing. We came very, very close, and maybe there's a chance we'll get another shot here, do something similar, maybe different. But if we don't connect this region, connect the people, opportunity, and dollars, right, through infrastructure and transit, what are we really doing,
So do you think that affects the perception of Detroit and Southeast Michigan as a region from around the country when you're talking to other corporations, other companies, other founders of things saying, hey, you should come to Michigan, you should come to Detroit to do your business? Do you think that is harming us in a way?
Well, you talk to Dan Gilbert or others involved with the Amazon bid. Certainly Amazon that's a prime factor in some of their decision, ultimately to go to Crystal City. I was just in DC yesterday, and just to see all the cranes, all the development all around Northern Virginia, and how DC sort of sprung up is unbelievable to see. But that's what happens when you have an influx of tens of billions of dollars right into a community. But yeah, for Amazon, transit was a huge issue, and we just don't have it here. You go to places. I was just in Toronto, 2 weeks ago, and they got all the streetcars, right, and all that stuff that we used to have here. And it's stunning to see, right? All that kind of stuff dates back to when we had it, and we just got rid of it. But they still have it in Toronto, and you see what a difference it makes, right? And so, at any rate, yeah, I think we do need to figure out, infrastructure, and I think we do have to figure out, the last part of I think what Monica was really talking about, which was it is around opportunity, and there's a bunch of aspects to that, creating the culture that enables us to bridge this divide, frankly, that we have in this region between kind of the big institutions and what happens on the ground. There's this big missing middle, right? I appreciate all the work that the big corporations have done, and certainly all the, foundations. But when it comes to that work that's being done with buildings here, programs there, all these kind of things, to what actually happens on the ground, what the lived experience is of founders, startups, right, entrepreneurs, there's this huge chasm.
So what's the ability that we should be able to what should we be looking at now to do in the next 10 years? What are small business owners, what should they be doing? Kind of what would the call to action be?
Well, so in those areas, we got to, starts at home, we got to fix education, right? That's just, we got to fund education. I mean, arguably, we have we have great teachers, we have great school systems. Although they're under tremendous stress and pressure, and this legislature continues to, I just honestly drive us in the completely wrong direction. I read about another $4 billion being pulled out of K through 12 education here to go shore up the budget in other places. This is insanity, right? If we aren't, it's just a race to the bottom, right? If we aren't actually helping our next generation set up, right, for the future.
Okay. So education-wise, and?
Yes. I think, development, affordability, public transit, these things in terms of infrastructure all kind of go together. It's great to see all the development in Detroit. That's one of the reasons we did open an office here, just ahead of our acquisition. The acquisition took us a little time to integrate, so we've been a little bit distracted from our efforts here, but we did set up even earlier in Austin, and you see the impact that a city that's built for growth can make, right? Austin has just exploded, right? It used to be like Lansing, small, sleepy southern college town, state capital, needed a car to get everywhere and nothing very tall. Now it's just this massive city of like 1 million people. Detroit has this unique opportunity at this point in time, as there's so much interest, so much activity, so much potential, but we have to work, intentionally to drive a progress that's equitable. Because I think it's not just about us building a successful and growing city and so forth. We need to build a just city. And that requires us to be, thank you.
Yeah.
We have to be thoughtful about what that means. I tell my kids, they're like, oh, Dad, you're a unicorn. I'm like, no, whatever. What it means is that we were just first, right? We were just first company to get to, start up via billion-dollar valuation, first to be a multi-billion-dollar exit. But like I tell my firstborn, my son particularly, who just started high school, being first means we have a responsibility, right? You have a responsibility to lead, which means that you have a responsibility to reach back and help others follow. And we need to see more of that here. I think that, for a long time, the culture of not just Detroit, but just Southeast Michigan's been sort of centered around these massive institutions because we've been so successful, right? We're the home of the $3 trillion global auto industry and, many generations. You're a Ford family or a GM family or whatever.
Yeah.
But these days, disruption happens from all around, all over the place, and we have to help foster the next generation of what happens here. There's a professor at U of M, Dr. David Brophy, who leads the Center for Venture Capital and Private Equity Finance. And I think even back in the 70s, 80s, he wrote papers and books even, I think, on how the economic concentration around the autos here in Michigan was actually a big risk, right, for the state. Not very popular sentiment at the time, especially when, with the oil crisis and later the Japanese challenge from the Japanese auto industry and so forth came. I don't think he made a lot of friends, but he was right. We have to diversify, right? Diversity is strength. And if we are actively working to diversify, the businesses and the economies here that can be successful next, we're just painting ourselves into a corner.
What do you think Detroit and the region could be like 10 years from now with a concentration on entrepreneurship, small businesses, and what you're saying is creating an equitable city?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Detroit Future City sort of initiative. I know, it's always hard and it's always messy and that kind of work, but I think they've done some of the hard work of bringing a lot of people to the table together, and not just the politicians or developers, but the community organizers and the nonprofits and the foundations to think about, in these 5-year plans. Like what does the city look like neighborhood by neighborhood? Because that's what it takes. It takes a detailed sort of look, right, at what is the future, not just of Detroit as this abstract kind of entity, but every neighborhood, every community that we have here. And I think, the report they had last year, I think it was last year, that basically concluded there's no resurgent Detroit without a resurgent black middle class, I think is a very clear call to action and agenda for us to think about. Because you can map that out. You can look at neighborhood by neighborhood. How far are we, right, from that? What is the percentage of black ownership here? We're in a building. Our office downtown is in one of, literally, you can count the number of black-owned buildings downtown Detroit now in one hand. We're in one of them, and we have to think about how we work to intersect, right? The progress of not just in local businesses like ours, but as we bring in more new factories, or we bring in other companies, or we develop more kind of companies from the ground up. Again, how we do it in a way that really benefits all. So I think what I'm happy to see, I saw that Wayne State has a new sort of Center for Mobility, right, in the city of Detroit, right? Because there have been others. I'm a proud Wolverine and go blue. But Ann Arbor's at M City, right there, and then toward Ypsi with Willow Run, right, there was the American Center for Mobility. But where was it in Detroit? So now there is one in Detroit, and thank you to Wayne State and others for doing that. But next, U of M is coming to downtown Detroit, and it represents a huge opportunity, right, for U of M to, for the first time since the 1800s, have a presence here and actually help bring more together. Frankly, something that U of M has not historically done had to do a lot of, right, in Ann Arbor, right? It's a very small town, and we can fit everyone in its stadium, right? So, I'll be very curious to see how projects like that, the train station, right, and with Ford trying to also create, some community there, really does extend further than just partnerships with all the usual suspects of their big companies and so forth. But folks like Monica or April Boyle at Build Institute, right, who supported hundreds of, small businesses here. We need more turns at bat. What creates more unicorns or whatever like us, we're not sort of these genetically engineered, sort of things. It's just, it's evolutionary, right? We need many, many more turns at bat. We need to learn by doing, and we need to create the opportunity for more folks to try and do so safely. It does require a certain amount of, you sort of have a certain amount of privilege to be able to go and try to start a company. It's kind of a crazy idea, and you need to be able to take that risk, and we have to make it possible for more folks to do so.
Deliberate investment, deliberate decisions. Doug Song, ladies and gentlemen, give him a round of applause. Our time is up.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right.